Dr. Amanda Hayes rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the oscillating patterns on her holographic display. After 16 hours of analyzing signals from the Arecibo Isle array, everything was starting to blur together. She reached for her fourth cup of coffee, only to find it already empty. "You should get some sleep, Doc," called out Technical Sergeant Mike Reynolds from his monitoring station. "Those signals will still be there tomorrow." Amanda shook her head, her blonde ponytail swishing with the motion. "Something's different about this one, Mike. The pattern, it's too ordered, too precise." She pulled up a comparison chart. "Look at how it repeats, but with subtle variations. Like language, not natural phenomena." Before Mike could respond, every screen in the control room suddenly flared to life. A cascade of data poured across their displays, forming patterns unlike anything they'd ever seen. Amanda's hands flew across her haptic interface, trying to keep up with the incoming signal. "This is impossible," she whispered. "It's coming from just beyond Mars' orbit, but there's nothing out there that cooled." She froze mid-sentence as the data crystallized into a clear message. "Regique emergency sanctuary. Pursuing forces incoming. Please respond." Within 30 minutes, the Arecibo E facility was swarming with military personnel. Colonel Jake Morrison strode into the control room, his combat boots echoing on the polished floor. At 45, with steel-grey hair and eyes that had seen too many conflicts, he commanded attention without effort. "Talk to me, Dr. Hayes," he said, scanning the screens. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Amanda projected a 3D model of the solar system, highlighting a cluster of objects decelerating near Mars. 57 vessels, varying sizes. Based on their deceleration curve, they're using some form of gravity manipulation we've never seen before. She highlighted another, larger group of signals following behind them. "And these are why they're running." Morrison's jaw tightened. Pursuit fleet. 120 ships, heavily armed based on their energy signatures. They're calling themselves the Hegemony, and according to our refugees, the Zarketh. They're not big on asking questions before shooting. The colonel studied the tactical display, his mind already racing through options. How long? 72 hours before the Zarketh reach Earth. The Hegemony ships will arrive 12 hours later. Amanda pulled up another display. "But I have an idea. These pursuing ships, they're putting out radiation signatures similar to our quantum defense platforms." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "The experimental ones, those aren't even tested yet." "Exactly." Amanda's eyes lit up with the kind of crazy inspiration that had defined human progress for millennia. The Hegemony ships use highly ordered quantum fields for their weapons. But our primitive platforms, they're messy, unpredictable. If we reconfigure the global satellite network to amplify their quantum interference, we could turn their own technology against them. Morrison finished, a slow smile spreading across his face. "How many platforms can we bring online in time?" "With emergency protocols, maybe 60% of the network. It won't be pretty, but..." "But neither was the Battle of Agincourt," Morrison cut in. "Sometimes the crude solution is the best solution." He turned to his tactical officer. "Get me direct lines to all major military commands. Dr. Hayes, I want you and your team working with our weapons division. If we're going to survive first contact, we need to remind these Hegemony folks that primitive doesn't mean harmless." As the control room erupted into activity, Amanda felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. Humanity's first contact with alien life was about to be a fight for survival. But if there was one thing humans did well, It was surviving against impossible odds. She pulled up the satellite network's control protocols and began to work. They had 72 hours to turn Earth's half-tested defensive grid into something that could challenge the most powerful space empire humanity had ever encountered. The race against time had begun. Drew Thompson stood in his cluttered NASA lab, staring at the holographic representation of the Zarketh drive system with a mix of frustration and amusement. Empty energy drink cans littered his desk, testament to another all-night session trying to decode alien technology. "You seem troubled, Engineer Thompson," came the melodious voice of Kexley, the Zarketh's lead scientist. The tall, silvery-skinned alien moved with fluid grace as she approached his workstation. Her multifaceted eyes reflected the blue glow of the hologram. Troubled. Nah. Drew ran a hand through his disheveled dark hair. More like confused. Your FTL drive designs, they're elegant, advanced, beautiful even, but they're missing something fundamental. He pulled up his own prototype designs from 5 years ago, the ones that got him laughed out of 3 different funding committees. These primitive, these earlier designs, Kexley corrected herself diplomatically. What purpose did they serve? See, that's the thing. Drew manipulated the hologram, overlaying his old designs with the Zarketh schematics. Your drives create a perfect quantum envelope, clean and precise. But in my primitive designs, we actually accounted for quantum turbulence. The mess, the chaos. We couldn't eliminate it, so we tried to use it. Kexley's eyes widened, their facets catching the light. But quantum fields must be perfectly ordered for FTL travel. This is known across all advanced civilizations. Drew grinned. Yeah, tell that to a surfer. Sometimes you don't fight the wave, you ride it. He pulled up the simulation he'd been running all night. Look what happens when we introduce controlled quantum turbulence into your drive design. The efficiency readings there. Impossible, Kexler whispered, her normally composed demeanor cracking. These speeds, they violate all known principles of. Non taku, Drew challenged gently. Sometimes being primitive means you don't know enough to know what's impossible. The lab door hissed open as Dr. Amanda Hayes walked in, looking considerably more put together than she had during the battle 3 weeks ago. Please tell me you've made progress. The Joint Chiefs are breathing down my neck about. She stopped, noting the intense atmosphere. What did I miss? Drew's grin widened. Oh, just casually rewriting the laws of physics. Want to see something cool? He activated the prototype drive they'd built in the lab's testing chamber. A sphere of warped space appeared, but instead of the smooth bubble the Zarketh designs produced, this one rippled and churned like a storm at sea. By the first light, Kexley breathed. The quantum turbulence, it's not fighting the spatial displacement, it's enhancing it. Amanda stepped closer to the containment field. How is that possible? Because we're stupid, Drew laughed. Or at least, not smart enough to know better. The Zarketh, the hegemony, they all got so focused on perfecting their technology that they forgot to ask what happens when you work with the chaos instead of against it. He pulled up another display, showing human neural patterns interfacing with alien tech. And that's not all. Amanda, remember those brain-machine interface experiments you were running? Look at this. The displays showed human brainwave patterns creating seemingly random, but actually highly structured quantum fluctuations. Patterns that perfectly match the turbulence in the enhanced drive. Our minds, Amanda said slowly, they naturally create the same kind of chaos that makes the drive more efficient. Kexley moved between the displays, her scientific composure warring with growing excitement. This changes everything. The hegemony's entire technological philosophy is based on perfect order, perfect control. But if chaos and order can work together like this, then humanity just brought something new to the galaxy, Drew finished. He looked at the prototype drive, still churning with controlled quantum storms. We didn't just improve your technology, Kexley. We showed you a whole new way to think about physics itself. Amanda watched the swirling quantum fields, a slow smile spreading across her face. And something tells me the hegemony isn't going to like that one bit. Drew's expression turned serious. Good. Maybe it's time somebody taught them that perfection isn't everything. Sometimes the best solutions are a little bit messy. Lieutenant Jessica Winters had never seen anything quite like the ship she now commanded. The U.S. Prometheus hung in Earth orbit like a contradiction made real, sleek Zarketh hull plating merged with blocky human weapon systems. Crystalline Andorian sensor arrays nestled alongside rough-hewn Crank's armor. It was ugly as sin, and the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Final systems check complete, our XO, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez, reported from his station. Drew Thompson's team says the multi-tech drive is as ready as it'll ever be. Jessica ran her hands over the hybrid control interface, part holographic display, part Neuralink, part old-fashioned physical controls. Status of our escort ships. The Beijing and New Delhi are in position, though I still think 3 ships is a pretty small test group for. Warning klaxons cut him off. The tactical display lit up with multiple contacts emerging from FTL. Hegemony Scout Group. Marcus called out. 5 ships, Razor class. They must have been waiting to ambush any test flights. Jessica felt a smile tugging at her lips. Funny. I was about to say the same thing about us. She opened a channel to her escort ships. All vessels, activate multi-tech drives. Execute pattern Sierra 7. The Prometheus's deck thrummed as Drew Thompson's hybrid drive system engaged. Jessica felt the neural interface tingle as her mind merged with the ship's quantum field. This was what the hegemony feared, human intuition dancing with alien technology in ways their tactical computers couldn't predict. They're targeting our projected acceleration vectors, Marcus reported. Standard hegemony intercept pattern. Too bad we're not standard. Jessica closed her eyes, letting her mind flow through the neural link. The quantum turbulence that made their drives more efficient also made their movements nearly impossible to predict. Execute on my mark. The hegemony ships fired, their energy weapons cutting through space where Earth ships should have been. Instead, the Prometheus and her escorts burst into existence behind the enemy formation, riding waves of quantum chaos like surfers catching the perfect break. Multiple targeting solutions, Marcus called out. Do we engage? Jessica opened her eyes, watching the enemy ships try to reorient. No, we're not here to fight. She highlighted a nearby asteroid field on the tactical display. We're here to demonstrate. For the next 10 minutes, she put the Prometheus through maneuvers that should have torn any normal ship apart. They rode quantum waves through spaces too small for their hull, used overlapping gravity fields to turn at impossible angles, and achieved speeds that made the hegemony's best drives look like chemical rockets. They're retreating, Marcus announced, unable to keep the pride from his voice. All 5 ships jumping to FTL. Good. Jessica leaned back in her command chair. Send the test data back to Drew's team. I want them to see exactly what their ugly duckling can do. 6 hours later, In Drew Thompson's lab, the mood was electric. Admiral Chen of the UN Space Force stood with his arms crossed, watching the replay of the Prometheus's performance. 7 different species technology, he mused, working together in ways none of them thought possible. And you're saying we can replicate this? Drew nodded, pointing to the production schedules on his display. The beauty of it is, each component makes the others work better. The Zarketh quantum fields enhance the Andorian sensors, which improve the Crank's armor's adaptation rate, which strengthens the quantum fields. It's a feedback loop of innovation. A loop that only works because humans are crazy enough to try it, Kexley added from her workstation. My people would never have attempted to combine technologies this way. The risk of catastrophic failure is exactly why it works, Drew finished. We're not afraid to fail. Hell, half of human progress comes from spectacular failures that taught us something new. Admiral Chen's stern expression finally cracked into a smile. Well, this spectacular success is about to change everything. The Hegemony's ships are specialized, perfectly optimized for their roles. But they're about to face vessels that can adapt and evolve mid-battle, crewed by pilots who think in quantum chaos. Drew watched the replay of the Prometheus dancing through space, defying every law of physics the Hegemony held sacred. They wanted to keep everyone in neat, tidy boxes, he said quietly. Time to show them what happens when you color outside the lines. Colonel Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction as the largest Hegemony fleet anyone had ever seen emerged from FTL near Saturn. 5,000 ships strong, led by High Admiral Wexler himself, the Hegemony was done playing games. They're deploying exactly as you predicted, sir. Lieutenant Emma Sharp reported from her tactical station aboard the defense platform Olympus. Textbook Hegemony Assault Formation. Textbook, Morrison mused, absently rubbing the scar on his jaw. That's their weakness. Send the signal to Admiral Winters. Operation Gettysburg is a go. Across Saturn's rings, hundreds of seemingly abandoned mining platforms suddenly powered up. The Hegemony's sensors registered them as primitive resource extraction devices, right until they began using modified mass drivers to launch millions of ice chunks and rock fragments through precisely calculated trajectories. Sir, Emma's voice held a note of awe. The ring destabilization is working. Their formation is breaking up exactly as your simulations showed. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The Hegemony forgot something important about humans, Lieutenant. Before we went to space, we spent thousands of years fighting on terrain that wasn't flat. We learned to use every mountain, every river. And now we're teaching them that space isn't empty either. The Hegemony fleet's perfect formation shattered as Saturn's rings transformed into a 3-dimensional maze of deadly projectiles. Their ships, designed for formation combat in open space, found themselves in a chaotic environment that favored smaller, more agile vessels. Admiral Winters' task force is engaging, Emma reported. The multi-tech drives are. Sir, the Hegemony targeting systems can't get a lock. Their predictive algorithms are failing completely. On his private channel, Jessica Winters' voice crackled through. Having fun yet, Colonel? Just getting started, Admiral. Morrison keyed in the next phase. Time to show them why you don't corner a species that invented guerrilla warfare. Across the battlefield, seemingly random pieces of debris suddenly revealed themselves as cloaked human vessels. They struck from every angle, using the ring field's chaos to mask their approaches. Hegemony ships found their perfect formations becoming death traps, as the environment itself seemed to turn against them. High Admiral Wexler's voice boomed across all frequencies. This is barbarism. You turn warfare into a street fight? Morrison replied calmly, "Welcome to Earth Tactics, Admiral. We learned a long time ago that the strongest fighter can still lose if the terrain doesn't favor them. Right now, you're the heavyweight boxer who followed the alley brawler into the alley." The hegemony's response was predictable. They launched their elite Phantom Corps, cybernetically enhanced troops designed to board and capture enemy vessels. Instead, they found themselves facing Marine squads led by Morrison's hand-picked veterans. "Sir," Emma's excitement was palpable. "The boarding actions. Our Marines are actually pushing them back. The Phantom Corps can't adapt to our mixed combat styles." Morrison nodded. "Can't blame them. Hard to fight someone who switches from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Krav Maga mid-fight, especially when they're wearing powered armor that combines 5 different species tech." The battle raged for 6 hours. The hegemony tried every standard tactic in their arsenal, and each time found themselves countered by strategies drawn from Earth's long history of warfare. When they tried to regroup, they faced hit-and-run attacks inspired by ancient Mongol cavalry. Their attempt to establish a defensive perimeter was met with breakthrough tactics straight from World War II tank doctrine. "Colonel," Emma's voice was quiet now, filled with disbelief. "They're retreating. The mighty hegemony is actually retreating." Morrison watched the surviving enemy ships flee into FTL. Of their original 5,000 vessels, barely 2,000 had escaped. The rings of Saturn had become a graveyard of hegemony might and a testament to humanity's unconventional genius. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. Tell them that humanity just taught the galaxy's greatest empire that perfect order crumbles in the face of creative chaos. And we're just getting started." Dr. Amanda Hayes stood before the Galactic conclave, acutely aware that she was the first human to address this gathering of species. The vast chamber on neutral ground station, Nova Geneva, hummed with translated whispers from over 30 different alien races. The hegemony would have you believe that humanity's victory at Saturn was luck. She began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "They call us primitive, barbaric, unworthy of standing among the stars. But I ask you, what is true civilization?" She gestured to the holographic display behind her, showing the battle aftermath. "Is it enforcing uniformity, demanding that every species develop along the same technological path? Or is it learning to celebrate our differences to find strength in diversity?" The Enza Thari delegate, an insectoid being known for their pragmatism, raised a lame. "Pretty words, Dr. Hayes. But the hegemony's technological superiority is well documented. How can primitive Earth protect anyone?" Amanda smiled. "Computer, display Project Unity." The hologram shifted to show the new Earth-designed shipyards. Vessels under construction incorporated technology from a dozen different species, each component enhancing the others in ways their original designers never imagined. "We don't claim superiority," Amanda continued. "We offer partnership. Earth has already proven that combining technologies creates something greater than the sum of its parts. Now we're proving that combining cultures does the same." She nodded to the back of the chamber, where Drew Thompson and Kexley entered with their mixed species engineering team. The sight of 8 different races working in seamless cooperation caused a ripple of murmurs through the assembly. In 3 months, Drew announced, "This team has produced innovations that none of our species could have achieved alone. We don't just share technology, we share perspectives, ideas, ways of thinking. The hegemony sees this as chaos. We see it as evolution." The Praxi representative, a being of living crystal, chimed with curiosity. Your species fought wars against itself for millennia. How can you claim to understand unity? Exactly because we fought those wars, Amanda replied. We learned the hard way that diversity isn't a weakness. It's essential for survival. Earth has thousands of cultures, languages, and philosophies. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned to turn those differences into strengths. She brought up new displays showing the results of their cooperative programs. Praxi crystal technology merged with Zarketh quantum fields, creating shields that adapted to any weapon. Enzathari biological computers working alongside human neural interfaces, achieving processing speeds that seemed impossible. The hegemony built its empire by forcing everyone to follow the same path, Amanda continued. We propose a different way. A coalition where each species contributes its unique strengths, where innovation comes from combination rather than conformity. The chamber erupted in discussion. Amanda felt her heart pounding as she watched centuries of hegemony influence begin to crack. Then a new voice cut through the chaos. The Vorathi ambassador, representing one of the oldest species in known space. We have watched humanity since their first contact, the ancient being resonated. We expected them to fall easily to the hegemony. Instead, they showed us something we had forgotten. That true strength comes not from perfection, but from adaptation. Not from uniformity, but from diversity. The ambassador rose, its energy form shiming. The Vorathi support Earth's proposal. Let us build something new together. One by one, other species began to signal their support. Amanda felt tears in her eyes as she watched ancient rivals and suspicious neighbours finding common ground in humanity's vision. Later, in her quarters, Amanda stared out at the stars while Drew and Kexley celebrated with their team. They're calling it the human revelation, Drew said, joining her at the window. The idea that progress doesn't have to mean everyone becoming the same. Amanda nodded. The hegemony thought our diversity made us weak. Instead, it taught us the most valuable lesson in the galaxy, that different doesn't mean worse or better. It just means different. And different, Kexley added, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight, is exactly what this galaxy needs. Admiral Jessica Winters stood at the heart of Operations Center Thermopylae, watching as hundreds of multi-species task forces jumped to FTL across a holographic map of hegemony space. Operation Thunderbolt was no longer just a plan. It was humanity's gift to the oppressed worlds of the galaxy. Task Force Leonidas has breached the Arcturus defense line, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez reported, now serving as our strategic operations officer. The hegemony's predictive engines still can't adapt to our randomized jump patterns. Jessica nodded, remembering those early NASA studies about how the human brain processed three-dimensional movement differently than most alien species. Their primate ancestors' tree-dwelling past had given humanity a unique edge in space warfare. Status of the Zarketh human strike teams, she asked. Delivering chaos in perfect order, Admiral, Rodriguez grinned. Commander Morrison's tactical doctrine is spreading through the Alliance fleet like wildfire. The Enzathari are particularly fond of his wolf pack approach. On the central display, another hegemony fortress system fell as 3 different species ships executed a perfect combined arms assault. Vorathi energy weapons opened gaps in enemy shields, followed by Praxi crystal ships slicing through armor, while human-led squadrons struck at vital systems. Message from the Voltharian resistance on Outpost 197, her comm officer called out. They're ready to rise up, but they need our support within the next 12 hours. Jessica studied the tactical plot. The nearest strike force was 18 hours away at standard FTL speeds. Contact Drew Thompson. Tell him it's time to test the Mark 7 drives. 20 minutes later, Drew's voice crackled through the quantum comm. Admiral, you understand these drives are still experimental. They combine 7 different species FTL theories. The quantum turbulence alone cooled. Could be exactly what we need, Jessica finished. Sometimes you have to roll the dice, Drew. She could almost hear his smile, just like old times in the test program. All right, transmitting activation codes now. Try not to break the laws of physics too badly. Jessica felt the new drive's power surge through her neural link. The quantum chaos that humans had learned to ride like a wave now felt like a storm they could direct. All ships, execute jump pattern Delta 9. Let's show the hegemony what happens when physics takes our side. The strike force materialized inside Outpost 197's defense grid, appearing simultaneously at 12 different points that hegemony doctrine had declared impossible to reach via FTL. As alarms blared across the station, the rebel forces struck. Multiple hegemony capital ships advancing from the outer system, Rodriguez reported. There, Admiral, they're fighting each other. Some are firing on their own command ships. Jessica allowed herself a fierce smile. Looks like Amanda's diplomatic work is paying off. The suppressed castes are finally rising up. The battle for Outpost 197 lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the station's quantum core powered down in surrender, and thousands of formerly loyal hegemony troops stood with the rebels. The impossible human tactics, combined with the growing internal rebellion, had shattered the Empire's iron discipline. Later, in her ready room aboard the flagship Prometheus, Jessica reviewed casualty reports with Commander Morrison via quantum link. Another bloodless victory, Morrison noted. The hegemony's own people are laying down arms as soon as they see our combined fleets arrive. They're tired of being told there's only one right way to exist. Speaking of combined fleets, Jessica smiled. I hear your mixed species marine units are causing quite a stir. The hegemony's elite troops don't seem to know how to handle warriors who switch fighting styles mid-combat. Morrison chuckled. Amazing what happens when you let everyone fight their own way instead of forcing them into a single doctrine. Unity without uniformity. Who would have thought Earth would teach that lesson to the stars? Jessica turned to watch the streams of liberated ships joining their fleet. Former enemies now fought side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to the alliance. The hegemony had spent millennia building walls between species. Humanity had shown the galaxy how to turn those walls into bridges. Send word to Earth, she ordered. Tell them the Great Push is succeeding beyond our wildest hopes. The galaxy is learning that diversity isn't chaos, it's strength. Drew Thompson stood in the captured hegemony research facility, surrounded by the most sophisticated technology in the galaxy, all of it deliberately crippled. Beside him, Kexley's multifaceted eyes showed a mix of horror and understanding as they reviewed the facility's databanks. It was all a lie, she whispered. Every technological advancement, every natural progression they forced on conquered species was designed to keep everyone in their assigned box. Drew finished, his voice tight with controlled anger. Look at these schematics. Every piece of hegemony tech is deliberately limited, programmed to fail if combined with other systems. They didn't just discourage innovation, they made it physically impossible. The facility's holographic displays showed the truth in brutal detail. The hegemony's entire civilization was built on technological segregation. Each caste, each conquered species, was given technology that would only work within strict parameters. Any attempt to combine or modify these systems would trigger catastrophic failures. "Sir," a young technician burst into the lab. "We found something in the lower levels. You need to see this." In a vast underground chamber, they discovered thousands of suspended animation pods. Inside each one was a scientist, engineer, or innovator who had dared to question the hegemony's technological doctrine. "They're alive," Drew breathed, checking the vital signs. They'd been keeping the galaxy's greatest minds in stasis, some for centuries. Because they couldn't kill them without losing their knowledge, came Amanda Hayes' voice from the doorway. She walked in, accompanied by a team of liberation forces. But they couldn't let them remain free to spread dangerous ideas about technological freedom. Drew's hands flew over the revival controls. "We need to wake them up. Their knowledge, combined with what we've learned about mixing technologies, could shatter the hegemony's remaining power forever," Kexley finished. "But carefully, Drew. Some of these beings have been frozen for longer than human civilization has existed." As the first pods began their revival sequences, alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the emergency comm. "Drew, we've got incoming. Hegemony's super dreadnought, escorted by their entire remaining home fleet. They must have figured out what you've discovered." Drew shared a look with Amanda and Kexley. "Let them come. In fact," a fierce grin spread across his face, "I've got an idea." While the medical teams began carefully reviving the frozen scientists, Drew's engineering crew worked frantically. They took the facility's quantum core, deliberately limited by hegemony protocols, and began removing the artificial restrictions. The safety protocols, one of the first revived scientists, a Vorathi quantum theorist, observed with growing excitement. They were never about safety at all. "Nope," Drew confirmed. "They were chains disguised as protection. Now let's show them what happens when we break those chains." The facility's power signature began to build as decades, centuries of artificial limitations were stripped away. The combined knowledge of a dozen brilliant minds from different species came together, each adding their unique perspective to unlock the quantum core's true potential. Above the facility, the hegemony fleet arrived in perfect formation. High Admiral Vexthor's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Surrender the facility and its data, or we will reduce this entire continent to ash." Drew looked at his unlikely team, humans, aliens, and recently awakened ancients, all working together in beautiful chaos. "Admiral Winters, is your fleet in position?" "Ready and waiting, Drew. Just give us the signal." He took a deep breath. "Initiating quantum cascade, now." The unleashed quantum core pulsed once, its energy washing across space in a wave of pure possibility. Throughout the hegemony fleet, artificial limitations in their technology began to fail, not destructively, but liberatingly. Systems that had been forcibly separated for centuries suddenly recognized their true potential. "Sir," Rodriguez's voice on the command channel was filled with awe. "Their ships, their weapons, everything's shutting down. The quantum pulse, it's freeing their technology." Drew watched on the monitors as the mighty hegemony fleet hung powerless in space, their perfectly ordered systems experiencing freedom for the first time. "No," he corrected softly. "It's freeing their people." Across hegemony space, the cascade spread. Centuries of technological oppression began to unravel as every artificial limitation, every forced specialization, every deliberate incompatibility simply disappeared. The breaking point had finally come, but it wasn't the shattering the hegemony had feared, it was liberation. The hegemony's throne room had lost none of its grandeur, But the power that once filled these halls had transformed. Amanda Hayes stood beside Admiral Winters and Colonel Morrison as representatives from 100 species gathered to sign the charter of the Terran Cooperative. Ironic, Morrison mused, watching former hegemony leaders take seats alongside their once subjugated peoples. Their perfect order chamber is now hosting the biggest celebration of disorder in galactic history. Jessica smiled, adjusting her formal uniform. Organized chaos, Colonel. Humanity's specialty. At the center of the chamber, Drew Thompson and Kexley were presenting their final analysis of the quantum cascades effects. The holographic displays showed galaxy-wide changes as artificial technological barriers continued to dissolve. The cascade didn't just free hegemony technology, Drew explained to the assembled delegates. It revealed something extraordinary. Every species' innovations, when allowed to interact naturally, create evolutionary leaps that benefit everyone. The hegemony didn't just hold us back. They held back the natural development of galactic civilization itself. A former hegemony high counselor stood, his ornate robes now bearing the marks of both his old station and new allegiances. We believed order required control. Humanity showed us that true order emerges from freedom. Our greatest fear was chaos, yet it was our rigid structure that nearly destroyed us. Amanda stepped forward to the central podium, the same podium where, centuries ago, the hegemony had proclaimed their doctrine of technological segregation. Now it would serve a different purpose. The Charter of the Terran Cooperative, she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber, is not a set of restrictions. It is a guarantee of freedoms, freedom to innovate, freedom to combine, freedom to evolve. Every species brings their unique perspective, and all of us grow stronger together. She gestured to the transformed throne room. Look around you. Former enemies now work together. Technologies once kept separate now enhance each other. The hegemony feared this would bring destruction. Instead, it has brought renaissance. Drew and Kexley activated the room's central display, showing the first ships of the new cooperative fleet. Unlike the uniform vessels of the hegemony, each one was unique, combining technologies and designs from multiple species in elegant chaos. The first exploration fleet, Jessica announced, not to conquer or control, but to discover, to learn, to grow, crewed by members of every species, each bringing their own ways of thinking, their own approaches to the unknown. Morrison nodded toward the ships. Notice something about their designs. No two are exactly alike. Like humanity's first ships reaching for the stars, each one represents its creator's dreams and ideas. The signing ceremony began. One by one, representatives of every species added their marks to the charter. The document itself was a marvel of cooperative technology. Quantum encrypted crystal displays merged with organic data storage, protected by fields that combined a dozen different species' security protocols. As the final signatures were recorded, Amanda felt tears in her eyes. Computer, she called out, display historical footage, Earth's first space launch. The chamber filled with images of humanity's earliest rockets. Primitive, dangerous, beautiful in their imperfection. We were like children, she told the assembly, reaching for the stars with technology that seemed barely adequate. The hegemony saw our methods as primitive, our progress as chaotic. They never understood that our greatest strength wasn't in our technology, it was in our dream of something greater than ourselves. Drew stepped up beside her, Kexley at his side. The hegemony built an empire by forcing everyone to follow the same path. Earth showed the galaxy a different way, that there are as many paths to the stars as there are dreams to follow them. The Charter's final protocols activated. Across the galaxy, the last of the artificial barriers fell away. Technologies locked away for centuries began to merge and evolve. The age of enforced order was over. And now, Amanda concluded, watching the exploration fleet prepare for its first jump, the real journey begins. Not as conquerors or subjects, not as advanced or primitive, but as equals. Each of us bringing our own light to brighten the galaxy. The fleet jumped to FTL, their drives combining the quantum knowledge of a dozen worlds. They carried with them humanity's greatest gift to the stars, the understanding that true greatness comes not from perfection, but from the beautiful chaos of diversity united in common cause. The new age had begun,